President Trump also tonight says he has not spoken with the JPMorgan CEO since that $5 billion lawsuit he filed for the bank closing his accounts. JPMorgan did that after what we're talking about here, the deadly January 6th attack on the Capitol. The president says he was debanked for political reasons, and that's why he's suing, with the lawsuit accusing the bank of having unsubstantiated woke beliefs, as the suit puts it, about the president's views, and that it was because, quote, the political tide at the moment favored doing so. I want to bring in Christine Romans, who's joining us now. The president, when he was talking about JPMorgan, just to set the table for viewers, right? The president's on his way back from Davos. He is in the air. He's on Air Force One. He can do this thing where he can come back to the cabin. He can talk with some of the pool reporters who are flying on the plane with him. That's what he's doing. And he's talking about this new lawsuit, which is big news, Christine, right? I mean, you know, this has been like your area for the last 6 hours here since this dropped. It has been simmering under the surface for a while, and now it has really exploded out into public view.
Yeah, and the president and his family, quite frankly, have sort of slammed banks for years, saying that they were debanked because of the president's MAGA views, that the banks don't like MAGA. And what the banks have all said is that, no, there's very strict regulations about who we can bank with. And what we know is that sometime in February, when the president, after January 6th, but when the president was no longer president, weeks after February 6th, January 6th, the president lost his banking relationship with JPMorgan. This is what JPMorgan says. We do not close accounts for political or religious reasons. We do close accounts because they create legal or regulatory risk for the company. And as you know, the president, his family, his businesses have had lots and lots of legal and regulatory risks over the years, including indictments and convictions, and have been barred from charity work and having foundations and universities. So all of that being said, that's a backdrop. But this week, Jamie Dimon was in Davos, and he criticized the president's immigration stance in the most pointed way that he has, and he's really against the 10% cap on interest rates, saying it would be economic disaster, not for the banks. He said we'd survive it. It'd be for everybody who gets paid by credit cards.
What's interesting, Christine, and we should note, too, that what the president's talking about as it relates to JPMorgan, we're getting that from the wire services that are traveling with them, from Reuters, et cetera. There's also this discussion, and this is sort of all woven in here. We know that we've talked about this. The president wants the credit card companies to put a 10% cap on interest rates. That's controversial in and of itself. The president is also out today threatening the New York Times, right? He's got this lawsuit against JPMorgan, threatening the New York Times, which is interesting, and there's a reference to this new poll we're talking about that's interesting here, showing how the coalition of voters he built to win the 2024 election seems to be snapping back. So if you're looking at what it is, so look at, for example, non-white voters, where they were in 2020, the support for the president in 2024, look at that big surge, and then this year, dropping back. And you're seeing that consistently for these various groups, Christine. The biggest reason is that they're upset with how the president is handling the economy. So what are the tools that the president can use? Is it pressure on these companies, like these credit card companies, to lower interest rates? Is it, pressure on the Fed that he's been pushing, the independent central bank, to try to cut interest rates too? Help us make sense of that piece.
Totally. I think those things are completely linked. The president knows that cost of living is a major issue. I'll tell you, I just got off the phone with a source familiar with the thinking over at Bank of America and said Bank of America is considering a one-year credit card at 10% interest, in part because of this. Because of this push, and talking with other banks as well about what they can do on affordability. I will note that most banks, if you have good credit, you can get a 0% interest for 18 months card at a lot of places. So these tools exist, but it's about the president and his wanting, I think, to take ownership of making a move that people will fundamentally feel. And I've just been, you talk about the wire service, I was just listening to the president on the plane, the audio of the president on the plane, and he is like, look, people are paying 28%. Somebody misses a payment, they file for bankruptcy. That's not going to happen. I'm not going to let these banks do it, and we're going to make sure that Congress, he acknowledges that Congress has to write that legislation.
So that's it, right? And I think that's important to note here. The president can say that he wants that. The credit card companies right now, they don't have to do it. It's not like it's a requirement if it comes out of the president's mouth.
No, but it sounds like at least some, and Bloomberg is reporting it's Bank of America and Citi, are considering what they can do for 1 year to appease the president here. And I'll say one last thing. Jamie Dimon was fascinating. He's like, fine, let's do a year at 10% on credit cards. Let's do it in Vermont and Massachusetts. Senators Warren and Sanders and see what happens to credit for people who don't have good credit if you have to cap it. They say if you cap at 10%, that a lot of people just won't be able to get a credit card.
So I have 17 more questions for you. Please come back. Much more to discuss. There's a lot as it relates to this sort of affordability push that the president is on with this lawsuit, et cetera. Christine Romans, plenty on your plate in your beat as well. Thank you.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.